Aaron and Thunder, who wants to pick up on where Potholer left off? This basic idea of just checking your sources. Why is this so difficult a concept for people to grasp?
All right. I'm in a debate right now that I'm about to respond to that's been going on for half a year with a prominent young Earth creationist. And one of the claims that he made 6 months ago was that they had original, undecomposed biological material, extant blood cells, and so on.
You've got to be shitting me.
For dinosaurs. Right. Now, this is a young Earth creationist.
Have they read the paper?
Well, that's the thing. This guy presented to me and quoted his sources. He provided all these different links for me because he accepted a challenge to meet me in a written debate. Now I'm thinking, okay, I went on, you and I are just talking on the radio, and we can make up anything we want on the fly, pull anything out of our ass. But the trick is when we go back to the sources and prove who was actually right, who got their data right, who memorized the figures correctly, and who was wrong. Well, we go back, and for 6 weeks, we've been bouncing back and forth on this, and he threw me all this data, link after link after link, for all these scientific studies for soft parts in fossil tissues. I concede there are tiny portions in central pieces of large fossils that when you saw through them...
It's worse than that. If you've actually read the...
Hold on. I concede that if you take tiny portions, microscopic bits, from the center of very well-insulated fossils and demineralize them so that you run it through an acid bath and it takes out all of the, so that it's not completely lithified like everything else, you can get what have been identified as chemical breakdown products that have a little bit of elasticity to them. That is not the same thing as blood. That's not the same thing as active proteins. This is what this guy's arguing. So he throws up a couple of dozen, maybe, different articles, different claims for extant, undecomposed, original biological material. I went through it. I read all these articles. I said, look, they didn't confirm this. They said they didn't confirm this. All they said here was, might be this, might be that, can't be sure. This is heme, not blood, and so on. They said they could have proteins in one of them, but all they were able to confirm was chemical breakdown products. All they were able to confirm was metal or some other piece that, some of the hardier chemicals that might have been residual from the actual form. This guy won't let go. He still insists that I'm wrong and that the articles say what he said they said. Panel of other people have read it through too, and they said, look, it does not say that. Show me where it does say that. He just interprets it the way he wants it to. He has to make it say that. So he's in the position that Monckton appears to be in. He's got an entire career invested on one misrepresentation. And when somebody comes up and says, you're wrong on the thing that you've got everything staked on, when are you going to correct that?
Can I go back to Potholer on that issue? I mean, Monckton's... You may not feel comfortable in saying it, I'm not sure. Monckton's utter dishonesty and misrepresentation must have a motive behind it. Is he making a living out of disseminating these untruths? Is that what his motive is?
Okay, first of all, I have never ever said that Monckton's dishonest, and there's a very good reason for that. Once we start getting into assigning motivation, then we're trying to read other people's minds. And we're really no better than the critics of climate science who are saying that, for example, a mistake that Phil Jones made or that Michael Mann made is motivated for political reasons, and they're doing this because they're dishonest. Once we start trying to ascribe motivation, we're really doing no better than they are. All I can say is he made a mistake. Now, if you say that someone has made a mistake, then the onus is on the other side to show that they haven't made a mistake. If you say that they are motivated for political reasons, the onus is on the other side to show that they are not motivated by political reasons, and then we get into a discussion which never ends. And for example, on the blood tissue thing, Aaron, I completely sympathize with this because I've had countless people tell me that these are red blood cells. And I say, no, they're not. The best you can say is they might be remnants of cells, or they're soft tissue. Soft tissue, I would accept. I think the problem came in. You've obviously read Mary Schweitzer's paper on this, which I think was in Nature, and she was very careful. She never ever called these red blood cells. The problem comes when she is interviewed in newspaper and magazine articles, and she's a rather excitable person, and she, I think, probably got a bit carried away and at times said more than was said in the paper. And I think a lot of the time people get this information, they're reading it in magazines and newspapers rather than going to the paper itself, which is the actual source. But then coming back again to Monckton, he was in a different position to Aaron, your interlocutor, because he never even came back to me. As soon as the information was put out there that he'd clearly been wrong, he just ran. I think it would be wonderful to have a discussion with him along the lines that you're having with this creationist, but unfortunately he decided not to come to the table on that one. But you're absolutely right.
And just to fill in the audience, just to fill in for the audience, I did message Lord Monckton a few days ago to invite him to appear on the show to discuss some of the issues that he has with Potholer. He did not get back to me.
Well, Aaron. He could sit in William Lane Craig's chair that we have sitting here, since it's not being occupied at the moment either.
It wouldn't be big enough for him.
I was about to say the empty chair probably makes a better intellectual contribution.
And I also want to comment that on what Potholer said about the declaration that DPR made about Monckton's dishonesty. I wasn't certain that we had firmly established Monckton's dishonesty well enough that we could come out and make that declaration. Now, with the guy I'm talking about, yeah, we have.
Well, the one thing that you can say that Monckton has not done by mistake is to include this ridiculous crest that he has on every single image that he ever shows.
At this point, DPR.
Thunder.
Right. So, yeah, in science, you frequently have to evaluate information and the credibility of the source. And this basically comes down to distinguishing the bullshit merchants from the straight shooters.
William, can you just mute your mic till we come to you, please?
And Craig, he's not even, so you get this sort of spectrum from the sort of scientists who are just sort of interested in finding out the truth, and they're very honest in sort of moving things forward. They don't really care about personal politics or any of that sort of thing. Then you get into the sort of semi-industrial people where they're a little more cagey about it. And then you get into the straight bullshit merchants, the salesmen, all that sort of thing. And Monckton, I watched one of his videos. This was shortly after Potholer got involved with him. And it just oozed bullshit merchant in that, first of all, like you were saying, DPR, there's this overuse of the appeal to authority by having this great big crescent, which looks very formal. He insists on being called, Viscount, whatever. There's the way that he tries poisoning the well, all the time, whilst just calling everyone who, the most mild disagreement is always reported as them lying. And, so there is never any, like what you were saying, Potholer. Usually if you're coming to these things, you can be fairly charitable at first, but when you come across someone whose interpretation of everything is that they're lying to you, and this is slide after slide, I don't really have any problem at that point in just putting him into the grade A bullshit merchant. And
I mean, I'm with you there, Thunder. I think that he's gone sufficiently far that you can call him dishonest. But there again, simply calling him dishonest and not addressing the arguments is not going to get you anywhere. So I think it's perfectly justified. You can have different approaches. Potholer's is to take apart every single argument he has made and show that it's wrong. And that having been done, I think that it's perfectly right to call him dishonest.
Can I just step in there, Richard?
Sure.
I think that's the Michael Moore approach, and Michael Moore is someone I particularly hate in the way he does his films, because I think that what we should be doing when we these people apart is to tear apart their arguments to show that they're completely false. And it's not necessary to then at the end of it say, I think he's dishonest. My opinion doesn't matter. If I can show he's dishonest, I don't need to say he's dishonest. The only reason I would need to say that Monckton was dishonest is if I couldn't find any other way of putting across that point of view. I think I have to show it to people and leave it to their intelligence to work it out for themselves.
Thunder.
I agree completely that, you know, just calling someone a bullshit merchant and listing the points that I have is not anywhere near as a convincing argument to actually just showing that they're talking crap. But, you know, the thing that struck me immediately when I watched Monckton is there were just warning lights going off all over the place that you shouldn't trust a thing this man says. Now, obviously, when you actually go into the actual details, that's indeed what you find. But just having watched his talk, this is in many ways what I find depressing, is that just by watching the talk, I'm stunned that anyone would take him seriously enough to not look into what is obviously a very one-sided presentation.
But doesn't this go back to what we kicked off with about people looking at the sources and asking for themselves? The fact is that a lot of people do not do that, and a lot of people, it's confirmation bias, isn't it? They hear from him what they want to hear, and they don't question it.
He's preaching to the converted, yeah. The preachers, if you like, the converted have found the preacher.
The fact that, for example, the most obvious distortion or misquote is a misquote itself, where you've got an original quote that we know that somebody said, and then what Mr. Monckton or anybody else then says the quote is. And when I show that these two are completely wrong, that in fact the quote has been changed, I get all kinds of oh, well, you know, this is just a paraphrase, or this is more or less what he said, and without understanding that what a quote actually means. I think people will always rationalize. They will always make excuses. As Thunder said, you're preaching to the converted. They will make excuses for it. So, Thunder, while you say, yeah, he looks completely untrustworthy, that's purely a subjective thing. And to someone who believes him, he would look absolutely trustworthy. He speaks with a wonderful accent. He talks in Latin. How could you possibly not trust someone who's a lord, for goodness sake? And that's the way that this is a very subjective thing. So I always say, you can have an argument till the cows come home about what his motivation might be, about whether he's really a lord, about whether he should be using the crest. These are all completely irrelevant questions. What we should be doing is sticking to the facts and where he gets the facts wrong. Because then you don't get into a discussion over it. It's black and white. And then you put people on the back foot.